Several people sighed in relief when Rand returned, and his father wrapped him into a fierce hug. "Did everything work out?" Moiraine asked anxiously. "It did," Rand responded. "Although I was unable to get Ishamael with balefire, so he will return. We'll have time for that, though. The Dark One's resurrection clearly isn't instant. So now we'll go cleanse Sedin," Moiraine said, as if she couldn't believe those words. "We will," Rand agreed. He turned to the Green Man. "How about you? Do you wish to stay here, or would you rather leave? Perhaps you could live the rest of your days with the Ogier, tending to a garden that does not need to fight the Blight every day, teaching them your songs and what you remember from the Age of Legends." The Green Man inclined his head to acknowledge Rand. "I will consider it. I will consider it. Could you perhaps return here soon, so that I do not need to make my decision now?" "Of course," Rand said. "Your time. You have earned whichever path you choose from here." He turned back to Moiraine. "Before we leave, we must go down into the eye and collect what it hid." "Right," she said. "I had forgotten about that." "I think we all did," Tam said. "This has been a rather exciting day." Together, they made their way down into the chamber, descending in the empty cavity that had contained the Sedin, at the bottom of which they found a chest containing the artifacts Rand had mentioned, as well as, "What are these?" Thorm asked. "Between everything else that happened at the Eye, I had forgotten all about that," Rand said. "Those are the pieces of a seal on the Dark One's prison. As far as I am aware, all 6 other seals should still be intact right now, although weakened like this one." Moiraine, unsuccessfully, tried to snap a piece into 2. "Don't bother trying that," Rand said. "While they grew weaker later on, these pieces still have the qualities of Quendila. I remember Lan lost a good dagger attempting to scratch one. It is moments like this that make me wonder why I was stupid enough to demand to come with you," Egwene remarked. Rand hugged her gently. "Because you didn't want to be left out while we went and saw the world. And besides, do you not enjoy your lessons with Moiraine? And do you not want to learn better control of your gift?" She smiled up at him. "Yeah, I do." He grinned. "And also, you're too darn stubborn to not leave your mark on the world." She punched his chest in mock offense. "Anyway," Rand said, letting go of her, "it's time to get a move on." He led the way back up to the surface and looked up at the sun. "We'll have to continue into the night if we start now," he told Moiraine. "But I'm thinking that might not be a reason to delay." She nodded. "You're right. The earlier this is done, the better." "Link with me, please," Rand said. Moiraine did so, then handed him control. Like they were used to doing by now, Rand minimized the flow of Sedin and used Moiraine's Sedar to weave a gateway to a hilltop overlooking Shadar Logoth, the same place where he had performed the cleansing last time around. Everyone went through the gateway, and once Rand closed it, he immediately opened a new one. Back in Faldara, Lan had bought a tent, which was stored together with some other commodities that belonged to him, even though he had no interest in them. This gateway led there, allowing them to grab the tent unseen without having to carry it into the Blight. Once they'd done that, Lan and the other men started setting up the tent, while Rand created yet another gateway, this one to Ruidian. He and Moiraine stepped through. "This is amazing," she said, looking around in wonder. Around them, the only city the Isle had ever known was laid out, grand despite its abandonment and the permanent cloud cover above muting the light. However, they weren't here for sightseeing, and Rand's attention was immediately on the many terangrial that were scattered across the large plaza. He led the way through them, and Moraine's wonder focused on them too. "They're all terangrial?" "Yes," Rand said. "Once I've established things in Tyr, I intend to return here, probably with a few browns, to start cataloguing all of this. There's a lot that may be of use. And over there in the distance, you can see a Vendasora." Moiraine looked that way. "In the previous timeline, Matt managed to get himself hanged on its branches." "You're kidding me." "I am not," Rand said. "I had to perform first aid on him to get him to breathe again. He made a deal with the Eofin without knowing the first thing about them." He's lucky they didn't kill him outright. Matt would win a game of dice against the Dark One. A dozen yards over, he spotted the access key to tarmongaidons, and he made his way towards them. "You're serious, are you not?" "I am," Rand said, picking up the female figurine and handing it to Moiraine before picking up the male figurine himself. "I don't have any idea where he gets it from, but he can genuinely rely on dice to roll badly when he wants to lose and roll well when he wants to win. Perhaps the pattern just likes him. Or perhaps not, considering he ends up in situations that get him hanged in the first place. He created a new gateway back to Shadar Logoth, and they again step through. "All right, we're ready to begin," Rand said. The men stopped where they were busy setting up the tent to listen. "To recap, Moiraine and I will be busy together during the cleansing. While we're doing that, all you have to do is watch. It'll take quite a few hours, likely well into the night. Once we're done, we'll fall unconscious and remain so for a few days. That's why we've got the tent, of course. I'm sure you can all find ways to occupy yourselves. When Moiraine and I have recovered, we will travel to Tyr and go from there." He sat down on the grass, Moiraine opposite him, and they placed the tarmongaidons in between them. Rand drew Cedar first, reaching out to the tarmongaidon through Moiraine, who he was still in a circle with. He drew more and wove a conduit, connecting the male half of the source directly to Shadar Logoth in the distance. It defied the mind, having simultaneously no length and an infinite length. Only his knowledge from the Age of Legends even allowed Rand to indirectly grasp what he was doing, and he marveled at the fact that he'd even been able to come up with this and pull it off without that knowledge. Still, this time he understood far better what he was doing, and he started drawing Sedin through the conduit. It could not possibly mix with the Cedar, being as inherently opposite as it was, and instead the Cedar squeezed the flow of Sedin to speed it up faster and faster. The Sedin reached Shadar Logoth before it reached Rand, and there, in that city of man-made evil, of evil that hated the shadow as much as it hated mankind, the taint remained behind. Although at first it was merely a minuscule shift in Sedin that even hinted at this happening. Now, stripped of the taint, clean, safe to use, it flowed through Rand, and he let it flow back into the source without further use. By his best theory, based on the most sophisticated philosophy from the Age of Legends, the total amount of Sedin and Cedar was finite, but whenever it was used, it would return to the source, ready to be used again, making it infinite in practical use. To cleanse Sedin, then, required Rand to channel all Sedin in existence, continuously stripping the taint away from it without letting it infect his mind. This was the use of the Shoidan Kal. Even though they had not envisioned it when they originally made the tarmongaidons and their access keys, Rand suspected the pattern had. A blaze of Cedar being channeled drew Shuan's attention. She looked up from the paperwork she had been fighting towards the southwest. Even as she did so, it grew stronger. It wasn't at the White Tower, or even Tar Valon. No, it was much, much farther away. The fact that Shuan could even feel it, hundreds of leagues distant, showed just how completely insane the amount that was being channeled was. "You will know when will be the right time for this." Shuan found herself walking to the window in shock. "Moiraine, what bloody insanity were you up to?" She looked out over Tar Valon, Dragonmount visible to her right, but no matter how far she looked, whatever was happening was far too distant to see from here, even with a vantage point this high. In fact, she walked over to a map of the Westlands that was hung on a wall. The channeling came roughly from the direction of the two rivers, and if Moiraine could travel, then she and the Dragon Reborn could be anywhere, including his home. Shuan contemplated her rather limited knowledge of what was going on, although it was still better than any other Aes Sedai except for possibly Elida, but likely not even her, could manage before coming to the decision to go to the hall. No doubt, a session would have been called by the time she arrived there, even though no one would have any idea of what was happening. She collected Lean, her keeper of the chronicles, and hurried down the tower. Indeed, when she was halfway there, a breathless novice almost barreled into them and told her that a formal meeting was being called by the Red Sitters. And while Shuan would normally be eager to whine, at least to herself, about the Red Ajah trying to obstruct her every move, she could acknowledge that in this case, they probably just wanted to know what that blasted channeling was. And if they hadn't called the meeting, another trio would have done so within a minute or two. They quickly arrived at the hall of the tower, that vaunted nexus of Aes Sedai politics and power, where the people in charge of the most powerful institute in the world convened. To bicker like children, if you asked Siwan what she thought of the hall. Lin went in first, calling the traditional announcement of the amyrlin seat's arrival, and Siwan hurried to her spot as soon as she could, seeing that 18 of the 21 sitters had already arrived before her. "What's going on?" Janya Frende of the Brown Ajah demanded immediately. "Has the sitting already been opened?" Siwan asked, as 2 missing sitters walked in. "Not yet," Lelaine Akashi, the eldest sitter, said. "Teslin, if you would." Teslin, a red and the youngest sister present, opened the sitting, briefly interrupted when Dosine of the Yellow Ajah arrived last. With that second bit of ceremony over, all eyes went to Siwan. "What's happening?" "What's happening?" Pevara asked. Despite Siwan's earlier internal grumblings, she had to admit that Pevara was one of the more tolerable Red Sisters. "I don't know," Siwan said simply. "Does this have something to do with your experiment yesterday?" Velina of the White Ajah asked. News had spread quickly, and many Aes Sedai were disapproving. In fact, just this morning, Siwan had spent several hours defending it in the hall, with the final conclusion being that she'd better not pull something like this again. Elida's involvement might well be the biggest surprise to everyone. She was quite influential in the Red Ajah thanks to her strength in the One Power, and had probably helped alleviate any harsher consequences. "As far as I am aware, linking with a man in Tar Valon does not cause a woman on the other side of the continent to channel impossible amounts of Cedar," Siwan said dryly. "I can assure you that I am as curious as you are what is going on there." Of course, it wasn't that simple. Dozens of our Sedai filled the viewing areas surrounding the hall as Siwan and the other sitters talked in circles, with the initial questioning of Siwan eventually turning into an overly elaborate conversation that boiled down to no one has the slightest clue what's going on. After 2 full hours, with that impossible channeling still going on out there, possibly in 2 rivers, possibly not, the sitting finally closed, leaving everyone as clueless as they had been. Tomorrow, Siwan would call together the group from yesterday and perform the experiment again. She was rather curious what could possibly have changed. Amis, wise. One of the Tawadat Aiel opened her eyes in the world of dreams. Soon, she was joined by 3 other dreamers, Bear, Mylaine, and Shana. "I hope you could clarify what's happening," Bear said. The elderly woman had lost none of her strength of personality with age. "A little, but not much," Amis replied. "As I'm sure you've already heard, we have felt extremely strong channeling to the west, across the spine of the world." Bear nodded, and Mylaine corroborated Amis's claim. "I suspect this is related to the changes we have seen in our dreams for the last month," Amis continued. "I believe the time for our seekers is already running out." "We just sent them," Mylaine exclaimed. "Hey!" "We did," Shana said. "But if unprecedented things are indeed happening, the dreams have never been as unreliable as they were this past month." "But only if their visions crossed that one day," Bear pointed out. Indeed, visions from before that day had become unreliable, but visions from after that day seemed as accurate, which meant plausible, but not certain, as they had always been. "And perhaps that is why we must hurry," Amis said. "We thought we should start preparing to search for he who comes with the dawn, and suddenly our dreams are pressing us to seek him immediately, like we had been dallying for a year." "The seekers will only just have crossed the dragon wall at all," Mylaine said. "I had a dream 3 nights ago," Shana said, "of he who comes with the dawn, inviting the seekers into his seat of power, the Stone of Tyr. Only I was there as one of them. He offered us shade and water, as an aiel would, and he spoke to me and Ruach." "What did he say?" "What did he say?" Mylaine asked. "He asked us to embrace our new purpose," Shona recounted. "To leave behind our forsaken oaths from the Age of Legends and join him, so we may spit in Sightblinder's eye on the last day." All 4 remained silent as they digested the vision. Dreams were often not literal, and could mean something very different from their obvious interpretation. Even when they were, they might not come to pass at all. The dream could be literal, in this case, a direct precognition of what would happen in a few weeks, although without Shana there. Shana's presence, then, was symbolic of he who comes with the dawn, extending this request, this offer, to all clan chiefs and wise ones, and through them, all aiel. It could also be metaphorical. Many wise ones across centuries had feared that the breaking of the aiel, which the prophecy of Ruidians spoke of, was that the past of the aiel as oathbreakers became public knowledge and would drive them to despair. Perhaps the invitation of he who comes with the dawn, then, was simply the practical reality. That those aiel who did not fall to despair would adopt this new purpose. Perhaps it was different from that, even, and they would swear a new oath. Perhaps he would reforge the aiel by force. And, of course, perhaps none of this would come to pass at all. It did not seem like a warning, of something to avoid, but even that could never be quite ruled out. There is only one conclusion I dare draw from that, Bear said. The Seekers will be late to the stone, even if they go there immediately. I agree, Shana said. I've wondered about this dream since I had it, and I would have shared it earlier if we had met before tonight. However, by itself it did not seem quite worth calling for an early meeting. Various groups of wise ones would meet with some regularity to discuss the Seekers and, where they could, steer them by appearing in their dreams. The four of them were supposed to have this meeting 2 days from now, but with all channelers feeling immense amounts of the one power being used to the west, they had all understood that it was necessary to speak to each other immediately. The dreams changed a month ago, Amy said, and I think this is just the next step. I agree, Mylaine said, nodding. We'll send them to the stone. After we speak to the other wise ones, Shauna cautioned. Of course, Mylaine said. Then let's go speak to them, Armis said, concluding this meeting. High Lord Turak settled down in the ship's cabin as his highest officers and High Lady Suroth joined him, together with a few Suldam and the Damane they had chained. Orwyn, please explain what the Damane have been reporting. There is extremely strong channeling going on to the east, the Sultan explained. All Damane I have spoken to report the same. They say it is hundreds, perhaps even thousands of leagues away, and the amount is comparable to what all Damane together would be able to manage. Turak suspected that everyone here was already aware of this information. They all had at least one Suldam in their entourage. However, it was always good to ensure there could be no confusion about what was being discussed in important meetings. Could it be an extremely strong Damane? Suroth asked. Impossible, Esonde said. Even the strongest Damane in all of Seanchan would only be able to channel a fraction of this power. We also need to consider the possibility that there may be Marath Damane, Turak said. We do not know what we will find when we arrive. They may have forgotten their oaths. Esonde shook her head. Despicable as they may be, Marath Damane are no stronger than Damane. Captain General Kennar, what are your first thoughts regarding the military side of a potential invasion? Turak asked. We must be on guard for the possibility of having to fight opponents with access to the one power like our own do, High Lord, Kennar replied. Do we need to reconsider our plan to gain a foothold in a remote area and gather information first? If there is unity across the Arith Ocean, whether it be Hawkwing's empire or a new one, a foothold may provide time to gather a force to oppose us, High Lord. With only the forces of the High Lean at our disposal and Damane on both sides, this could drive us back into the sea. And if there is no unity, then we are almost certainly able to match any one nation we find, even if their armies include channelers. Only an alliance would risk our success. Turak glanced at Suroth, trying to divine her thoughts. She was the only one who was close to an equal. Turak was a member of the royal family, 12th in line to the throne, as shown in the way he kept his head fully shaved. But Suroth was herself of the high blood, shown in how she shaved everything except for a small band in the middle, where her dark hair grew long. She did not speak up, however, so Turak asked the next question. If we do not establish a small foothold first, how do we know whether we need to conquer in the first place? An excessive show of force might lead to misunderstandings. We could commandeer a smaller ship or two, interrogate the sailors, and, if needed, use such a ship to get scouts to land unnoticed, Kenna said. Once they return, we can make an informed decision. However, it may please the High Lord and High Lady to already make plans for every possibility. If we are not welcomed, we should push hard, Suroth said. Leave them no time to organize a resistance, whether they are unified or not. It is at the very least worth considering, Turak said. Your thoughts, Captain General? Turak's suspicion that Kenna would have his doubts were immediately confirmed. High Lord, in order to mount an effective push like that, we would need more troops than the Hylian has. Would we need those immediately? Turak asked. Kenna considered the question. No. The Hylian forces are sufficient to establish a presence. However, more forces would have to arrive quicker than the time it takes for a messenger to sail across the Arith Ocean, forces to prepare in the homeland, and those forces to sail back east. Turak nodded, meaning we would have to mobilize those forces before we land. Yes, High Lord. We now have confirmation that aL'Thor Hawking's lands are where we believe them to be, Suroth said. What if we mobilize additional forces that can back us up once we have arrived? Turak considered that, as did Kenna. Captain General, what would you do if it turns out that Hawkwing's descendants still rule his lands? We could send a messenger back and have the fleet turn around, he said with a hint of uncertainty. However, it would be a costly endeavor. But we do now know that they have powerful channeling capabilities, Suroth said. Would that not justify sending more forces beyond what the Hylian was granted? It would, Turak said. We will take the safe path. A messenger ship will return to the homeland to report how events unfolded and request more troops. High Lady Suroth, I propose we both offer to personally reimburse 25% of the financial costs incurred by the reinforcements if it turns out they are not needed to reduce the risk the Empress, may she live forever, takes by preparing them and sending them out. That is a risk that seems worth taking, she said. Ensure that the messenger is clear that we only take these financial costs if they are sent back to the homeland. Of course, Turak agreed. The Empress, may she live forever, decided on the Hylian, and its financial risks personally. If aL'Thor's lands are hostile and we need to invade, the Empire also stands to gain more, as it will assume direct governance. With that, the meeting was concluded, and Turak sent everyone back to their own ships while he started carrying out the decisions they made. Night had fallen over Shadar Logoth and its surroundings, yet still Rand and Moiraine were channeling, doing whatever it was that had formed a large black dome inside the cursed city. Egwene was bundled up in warm clothes, even though it wasn't quite as cold as previous nights had been. Nynaeve had listened to the wind and told them spring was finally coming, which Tom said was because they had beaten the shadow at the eye. The Gleeman had also told them of Aridhol and its downfall, until it became the twisted, empty husk that was the Shadar Logoth that lay in front of them. Now, it was partially consumed by the half-sphere, and all of them were watching it. No one wanted to sleep while a miracle of a magnitude that had not been seen since the Age of Legends was happening in front of their eyes. Despite that, conversation had fallen quiet some time ago, and Egwene and Matt had both found themselves nodding off a few times. No matter how much Matt denied it, something about the dome suddenly caught Egwene's attention, beyond the way she'd been staring at, and beyond it. As she watched, a flame started to writhe up from the smooth surface of the dome, as black as the dome itself. Another one formed, and a third, and more joined them, until the entire thing burned pitch black. Then it collapsed in on itself, vanishing into a point and taking the Forsaken City along with it. 6 heartbeats later, a thundering noise made itself known, and a strong wind began blowing towards the city, making egwene hold on to the loose shawl she had bound around her head for warmth. Was that it? She asked as she realized the channeling from right behind her had stopped. She turned and saw that both Rand and Moiraine had slumped over. Nynaeve was already on them, checking their health, and Egwene joined her at Rand's side. Moiraine is fine, Lan said. However, she is incredibly tired. Rand is as well, Nynaeve said. I can only assume that they succeeded. Matt, Perrin, Get over here. Help Lan and Tam to carry them into the tent. We'll have to wait for them to recover before we can go anywhere. Egwene walked along as the men, carried him inside, watching his peaceful face. He had changed tremendously, with those 2 years of the future weighing on him, and centuries of knowledge from a forgone age. And yet, he was still the same good-hearted boy she'd crushed on in Eamon's Field. If anything, it showed even more clearly now that he had lost his awkwardness. She grabbed the blanket and put it over him before crawling under it herself, hugging herself against the tall redhead. Part of her worried about how much she had to learn in order to balance Rand as a wife or girlfriend or whatever the future would make them should. But she was never one to shy back from a challenge, and she was determined not to disappoint him. Siuan led her previous group of sisters to Loghain's new quarters, where 4 other sisters were standing guard. None of these were part of the 14 that had linked with him a few days ago. "Mother?" Bavara queried. "Da!" Siuan and Elida had agreed on her because she was one of the Reds least likely to cause issues about the experiment, on top of being one of the more influential Reds. What will the exact experiment be today? You did say we would have a second experiment, but I don't see the use in just repeating the same thing. We've all felt the taint. We have, Siuan agreed. Dai! The letter I received was somewhat mysterious, but I trust the sister who sent it. We will repeat the experiment in the same way as the first time, and I will be just as disappointed as you if we don't learn anything valuable. Although everyone kept their Aes Sedai mask up, Siuan had no trouble picking up on the annoyance of several sisters who clearly thought this was a waste of time. Siuan wasn't sure if she didn't agree, although Moiraine had obviously known something big would happen, and this seemed related to it, which was why she carried on with it anyway. "You can enter with us," she told the guards. The amyrlin seat was above things such as knocking, so Siuan simply marched ahead into Loghain's quarters. The false dragon was sitting at a table, reading, although he looked up when they entered. "There you are again." "Here we are again," Siuan said. "We wish to repeat the experiment from earlier." "Just the same thing again?" he asked. "No! Didn't do much beyond passing the leadership of the circle around, did you?" Great. A mouthy, false dragon. As if this experiment wasn't silly enough yet. The worst thing was, they couldn't even do much about Loghain mouthing off. Unless they wanted to resort to torture or corporal punishment, he was already going to face the harshest sentencing he could possibly receive. He simply had nothing to lose by being abrasive towards his captors. "Yes, just the same as the first," Siuan said, trying not to let her frustration shine through. "Same deal as previously. You make any seemingly hostile move while unshielded, I execute you. Don't worry about me. I like living. Right now, at least. Even if I somehow got all of you, I'd never get the rest of the tower." "Link with me," Siuan instructed, drawing 12 sisters into her circle. "Drop his shield." The guards dropped Loghain's shield, and she reached through him. Again, she felt herself momentarily overwhelmed by the torrent of sedin, pushing her and trying to crush her in. Its wild flow, but she had expected it this time, and immediately squeezed it to a trickle. Loghain gasped. She looked at the false dragon, his face showing pure astonishment. It's gone," he exclaimed. "The taint is gone." Several sisters gasped in turn, and Siuan frantically searched through sedin, seeking that same disgusting film she'd felt previously. And she could not find it. Belatedly, she added the last 2 sisters to the circle, while all 19 sisters in the room shared looks of surprise and, yes, even shock with each other. "Is that true?" Elida asked sharply. "That cannot be true, can it?" "I can't feel it," Siuan said. "I remember what it was like, and I can't find it again. I feel like I should be able to sense it. Let me try." Siuan handed the leadership of the circle off to the Red. "Impossible," Elida muttered, a look of consternation on her face. Eventually, she shook her head. "I cannot feel it either." "Forvara." She handed off leadership, and one by one each of the sisters confirmed with their own senses what sounded too outrageous to be true. "This is amazing," Varen said, still sounding somewhat absent-minded, although if she was already thinking about the consequences, Siuan could not blame her. "It must have to do with what happened yesterday, right?" It has to be connected, Logan said. I felt it too. It wasn't only Sadar. There was Sedin involved too, hundreds of leagues away. When Moiraine had written about surprises, Siuan thought she would be ready for everything that might get thrown at her. Not this. No one in the entire White Tower had been ready for a dragon reborn whose first public act was to do the impossible and cleanse the taint. She addressed the guards. Ready the shield. Logain will remain shielded until we have had time to respond to this development. His punishment, including whether or not he will be gentled, shall be decided after that. She released several sisters, then released Logain. Shield. Once the false dragon was shielded again, she released the rest of the circle. I wish to have some time to speak to Elida. She is the one to have most recently spoken to the sister who suggested this experiment. Pavara, I will contact you once we've concluded our meeting, so that you may call a sitting. I'm sure everyone here wishes to share what we just learned. I may wish to call Elida as a witness if she may know more, Pavara said. That is acceptable. I imagine everyone here will be asked to witness before the hall today. But please allow me to speak to her first. Pavara nodded. I find myself in a rather good mood after what we just learned. I will wait, Mother. Siuan led the way out of Logain's quarters, Elida just behind her. The Red seemed just as eager as her to have this conversation, something that Siuan, just this once, did not care about. Cleansing, Sedin was world-shattering. No one, certainly not Swan, had even believed it possible. But more importantly, it would fundamentally impact the Aes Sedai way of life in more ways than she could even imagine. Would they start accepting men in their ranks? Who would even teach them? What was the purpose of the Red Ajah supposed to be now? Although Elida was probably bursting with questions just as much as Siuan herself, they both remained quiet until they arrived in Siuan's chambers, where Siuan sat down behind her desk, Elida opposite her. I need everything you know about Rand aL'Thor, Siuan said. Nothing held back. This has to do with him, doesn't it? Elida asked. But, who is he? You have met him? I have not. I'd imagine you know better than I do. Mother, with all respect, I remember who Moiraine Sedai's best friend was before she was raised to the shore. I know precious little beyond Moiraine's rather mysterious letter, Siuan said. I certainly did not have even the slightest reason to believe something like this might be coming. I merely executed the suggested plan, which, I will acknowledge, I did because I trusted her. I would say that trust has proven itself. Elida nodded in acknowledgement. Itahole. When aL'Thor was brought before the Queen, I had a foretelling. It said he would be the eye of the storm and an isle of calm in a sea of destruction, among other things. From a foretelling I had years ago, reinforced by this one, I have reason to believe tarmongaidon is coming, and all my actions since have worked towards preparing for this. Then we align on that, Siuan said. Although the foretelling that has motivated me in this regard was made by Gitara Moroso, shortly before her death. I only knew of it because I was present when it was made. I feared the dragon's return and the chaos he would cause, Elida said. When I had my foretelling last week, part of my mind went to the possibility that aL'Thor could be the dragon reborn. But the words I spoke seemed a clear contradiction to that. How could the dragon reborn be the eye of the storm and an isle of calm in a sea of destruction? Now, he is the dragon reborn, Siuan said plainly. If Elida was willing to share dangerous information with her, she would return the favor. What she'd heard so far implied their goals might well align closely. You knew. Gitara's foretelling told of his rebirth, Siuan said. Moiraine has spent the last 20 years trying to find him. He was raised in 2 rivers, yet he knows the correct etiquette, Elida said. He held himself like a lord at Morghese's court, yet he was at home between his friends in the inn, too. He was confident and self-assured, in a way even many nobles cannot match. A true leader, as my foretelling also said, and someone who will lead, something that seems obvious now. And, while we do not know the method besides using extraordinary amounts of both Sedar and Sedin, he cleansed the taint, Xuan said. And not by accident. While Moraine's letter did not speak of it, she clearly knew this was going to happen. Which also means she trusted him. Enough to do this immediately, in fact. And, I suppose, we can also answer the question of how she learned the weave of traveling. A fish cannot teach a bird to fly, Elida said, but perhaps a bird can teach a fish to swim. Siwa replied, I can tell you there are many birds fully at home in the water. Then again, that is not what the saying is meant to convey. Let's not make any hasty assumptions, only that when it concerns aL'Thor, we should be careful not to name something impossible too easily. Whatever happens next, we will need more information, Elida said. The dragon and Moiraine need to visit Tar Valon. Unless you know more, mother. Precious little, Xuan said. I am very impatient to speak to both of them. Myself. Moiraine wrote in her letter that they would visit soon and, I quote, hopefully within a week's. I will give them that long. Elida nodded and stood. This has been an enlightening conversation, mother. And I respect your efforts, even if I may disagree with some of the decisions. I imagine we will be talking more in the near future, Xuan said. For one, I will wish to hear more about your foretellings. But for now, you may inform Pevara that she can call the sitting. And please keep everything we discussed in this room secret until there is no longer a need to. The shadow has ears everywhere. I will, mother. She turned and left for the Red Ajah quarters, while Swan went and collected Lean so that she could arrive at the sitting as soon as possible.